7:39 officially Saturday night against Kentucky. Still about 500 tickets, less than 500 tickets remain for the game. And with that, Coach Muschamp.
How we doing? Kentucky here Saturday night. Great to get back to Williams-Brice Stadium in front of our fans, and I know they'll be excited. We'll have a great crowd against Kentucky. He's a good football team. Mark Stoops, a good friend of mine, does an outstanding job. He's done a fantastic job at Kentucky. Eddie Grand, their offensive coordinator, another guy that I've worked with before and I got a lot of respect for. You know, really committed to the run last year, really against us probably. And Benny Snell's an outstanding back, tough, hard-nosed, runs north and south, gets positive yards, rarely takes negative plays. Shaheem King's a guy that is a change of pace guy, somewhat of what they had last year with some other guys. Has done a really nice job. They're big and athletic up front. C.J. Conrad's an outstanding tight end that you've got to account for in the run and pass game. Steven Johnson's a guy that I think's really been a calming factor for their team when they went with him last year and was creating some things with his legs. He throws the ball well, but commands their offense extremely well. Garrett Johnson's one of their leading receivers in Kentucky history, and they've got a good, talented core at the receiver position. They're more of an odd structure defensively, and the two guys that jump out at me is Courtney Love and Jordan Jones. Both linebackers are very active, make a bunch of plays, very instinctive. They're long and athletic in the secondary, and special teams, Dean Hood, their coordinator, does a really good job there. So we got our work cut out for us, but it's really, really excited for our players and for our fans to get home to Williams-Brice. Excited about that. So I'll open up for any questions.
Raise your hand, we'll get a microphone to you.
Will, how much, if at all, have you mentioned a 3-game losing streak to Kentucky to the guys?
Well, I told them, our guys in the locker room after the last ball game, our seniors haven't beaten these guys, and that's not something we need to allow to happen. And so we'll certainly be focused on Kentucky this week and understand what's at stake. It's the SEC East. It's the home opener. So there's a lot of things. I think last year this is a football team that we could not stop the run last year. They bled us out in the fourth quarter, and we didn't run the ball effectively at all. So, good challenge for our guys this week.
Will, have you liked the approach that these guys have taken these couple of days after starting the season 2-0?
I have. We gave them Sunday off because we got back so late. We didn't get back to about 2:30 in the morning. We gave them Sunday off other than injury check, and then had some meetings on Monday, had a good workout, and we had a good day today, good start in our preparation. I do need to add one thing on an injury front. Kyle Markway has a fractured rib and is going to have surgery. He's going to probably be out 6 weeks, got hit on a kickoff return, and hate it for Kyle. He's a wonderful young man. They're playing at home in Missouri. He had the foot last year. He's got this year. Very disappointed for him. And certainly was a guy that was providing some quality depth for us at tight end and was a core special teams guy for us. He's a shield in the punt, and he's on kickoff return, and I hate that for him. Stephen Montag will probably try and practice tomorrow. We'll see if we get him back. And other than that, we should be fine.
Coach, you've often talked about how important it is for these guys to see these results and to be able to celebrate those wins. Where's the confidence level of this team? I mean, you're 2-0, you're almost ranked in the top 25, and now you've got all your home games still in front of you.
Well, I think that our guys are pretty guarded with where we are from a standpoint of certainly when you do get positive results, you feel a confidence boost in what we're doing and what we're coaching you to do and the performances that they've had the last 2 weeks against two good teams. But certainly, part of my message for them is be a coachable player and understand the good plays take care of themselves. The negative ones are the ones the opponents, as we get ready to move forward, starting with Kentucky, are looking at the negative plays that we've had in all three phases and what they can do to take advantage of those situations. So those are the things we've got to get corrected, and we got a lot to correct. We certainly hadn't played our best game yet.
Beyond just Debo being Debo, what have been some of the keys to success in the kickoff game?
Kickoff return?
Yeah.
I think they've been blocked well. I think, I look back at Keel Pollard, at Javon Charleston, Chavis Dawkins, Evan Henson. I mean, we've had some guys that have made some key blocks to spring him and create a one-on-one, which he's going to win a lot of those in space. Certainly did the other night. But I think that we've done a nice job. Anton Wilder. I mean, we've had some guys that have done a really nice job blocking up front and execution of the return as much as anything.
Will, what would you say is the identity of your offense right now, or what would you think that Kurt Roper would say is the identity of the offense?
I think we're balanced in what we do. I think that that's what we want to be. We want to be balanced in what we do. Take what the defense gives you as far as those things are concerned. But I think that we're a team that certainly can be efficient throwing the ball, and I think we're going to continue to grow the run game and be efficient running the ball. And I think I would say that.
Back there, Mike.
Coach, obviously your team's a very young squad, but with the way the special teams is, a lot of young players usually play on special teams. To be able to see the impact both units have had, especially with the return game, even blocking field goals last week. I mean, how encouraging is that, seeing guys that might not necessarily be starters right now, and they see guys that are in the same class as them going out there and making an impact on special teams?
Well, I always tell players that everybody's got their role within the organization, and if you don't like your role as far as playing time, then do something about it, perform. And a lot of times as coaches, we build confidence with a young player through special teams, that they're going to be able to perform at a high level, execute a certain job at a high level, and a lot of times that happens on special teams. And that's where sometimes those responsibilities are first given. Then they do a good job, and all of a sudden their role starts to continue to grow on offense or on defense. And there's no question. It's 1/3 of the game to me. You control the vertical field position. We've won the field position battle in our first 2 games, which is a huge reason why we've won the first 2 games. And our players understand that.
Will, you mentioned the run defense last year against Kentucky. What was the biggest problem? Just guys not being in their spaces? Was Snell just too slippery? What was the biggest?
Well, Boone Williams was a good back as well, JoJo Kemp and Snell as well. They had 3 really quality backs. But, as a couple issues, number one, fundamentally, we're much better up front. Hand placement, pad level, a lot of those things. I think they've got a good offensive line. They blocked us in some situations. They created some one-on-ones. We missed some tackles. One on their sideline and several late in the game as far as keeping drives alive in those situations. So I think fundamentally, we need improvement. I think we have improved. Playing blocks much better. I think we're a stronger front 7 than we were a year ago. We got pushed around last year, and I think that we've tackled better.
How much flexibility does Bryson give you in that 3-3-5 personnel grouping? And since you got here, how much has he improved playing in space coverage-wise?
Well, again, I think that, as far as it's hard for an offense to count him as far as whether he's an outside linebacker or is a defensive end, but he has pass rush ability. He also plays extremely well in space. So that's something we've really worked on as far as expanding his role as we got into the summer and realized that, Sky Moore and T.J. Brunson and Bryson Allen Williams are going to be 3 of our better players, and we need them on the field at the same time as much as we can. And so with that being said, we came up with some different things that we haven't necessarily done defensively to find ways to get them all on the field at the same time instead of maybe putting a nickel in the game or an extra DB in the game. So that's what we've tried to develop our package to fit your players, and I think that's what you do as a coach. You find out who your best players are, and let's make sure that we accentuate those guys to get them in situations to be successful.
Jake acknowledged that going into the Missouri game, he kind of was a little bit hyped, kind of sailed that one ball to Hayden on that 3rd down. What steps do you take this week to kind of make sure that the emotions of the home opener are channeled correctly, not just by Jake, but by your entire team?
Well, I think, again, our guys will be excited, but you lean on some of the experience you have in the room, and we've got a lot of experience in the room that our players, especially young players, will listen to and channel it a little bit better as you focus in on the game. It's something that I'll probably address before game time.
Will, you were talking about how well the linebackers have played. How big of an influence has Coach Peterson had with those guys, with his experience as a college player and in the NFL?
Well, I think not just at the linebacker position. I think for our entire team that he's a guy that because of his experiences as a player, he's got instant credibility with our team and our players, and deservedly so from his experiences. But Mike's only been coaching now for 2 years, but does an outstanding job of relating with the players, of sometimes taking something that I say and making it sound more applicable to a player, which I think is something you got to have within your staff. And but he has instant credibility with our football team because of his experiences. And whether it's talking about the NFL, whether it's talking about dealing with an agent, whether it's talking about whatever it is, he's experienced those things firsthand. And our players, gravitate to that and listen to that in a huge way.
John.
Two-part question about CJ Conrad. One, what is the best part about his game and playing against him last year? And then two, how much does it help that your linebackers practice against Hayden Hurst week to week, and how much does that help?
Well, I think
with this matchup?
CJ's a dual threat guy. He's a guy that's going to stick his face in there in the run game, but he's also a guy that can stretch the field vertically. So those tight ends are hard to find right now. A lot of them are wide outs that don't want to block anybody, or they're slugs and they can't run a route. And he can do both. And I think that that's something we see every day with our tight ends, and certainly Hayden being one of those guys. But I feel like we've got several guys that are in that mold that can do both things. So certainly does it help you to be exposed to something like that? Absolutely. But I got a lot of respect for C.J. Conrad and his game and the way he plays and what he puts on film.
Coach, obviously 2 really hard-fought games, both pretty much on the road. But what are your feelings now? I mean, as opposed to going 0-2, even 1-1, you're undefeated coming back here to Williams-Brice in a night game.
Well, I mean, regardless of our record, our fans will be ready to go. I do know that, and they'll be excited, and I know our players will be excited to play for them. So, happy to be where we are, but at the end of the day, that's not going to change the outcome of Saturday night and what happens there. We got to go play well against a good football team.
Will, not over here, Will. Not that your receivers didn't block well last year, but are they even more physical this year? And is that kind of an underrated part of Debo's game?
Absolutely, and I think it's something that Brian McClendon does a really good job of, and our offensive staff of teaching the importance of blocking downfield. That's where you create explosive plays. You get on the second level, you can make a guy miss, but when you see Brian Edwards and you see Hayden Hurst and you see Debo Samuel and you see some of the blocks that are delivered downfield, that springs runners. And that's one thing that I would say about our team is we got a pretty unselfish football team. We don't have a bunch of guys worrying about who's catching the ball and who's running the ball. It's about what's best for our football team, and that's been fun to see. It's been fun to watch, especially in our society nowadays.
Coach, have you seen Javon Kinlaw develop from when he got here for training camp to now, and what's kind of his role going forward with the defensive line?
Well, his role is going to continue to expand when he plays well, and that's something he's got to prepare and practice extremely well. He's learning that process of it, and now moving forward, continuing to be more consistent in his performance, continue to get his weight down a little bit. He knows that. He'll be the first one to tell you that. And Javon's extremely bright. I mean, he's a guy that really is articulate and understands the things he needs to do to be successful as a player. And he's been great. I mean, I've been pleased with him the whole time, and he continues to improve and get better. And the better he gets, the better defense we can have.
Is there a little extra challenge week to week in the stark contrast in styles going from that wide open Missouri spread to kind of the pistol downhill power game Kentucky has?
Well, I think each week that's the hardest thing defensively is offensively you run the plays you run, and you get ready for a 4 down or a 3 down or a pressure team or whatever. And then defensively, it's a new bag of tricks each week, and you've got to be able to be multiple in your scheme and system and introduce things and not teach total different concepts for your players within your scheme and system. And that's the hardest things to be a defensive player is to adjust week to week to the different things we're asking you to do. And but certainly there is some carryover, I think, with our offense and Kentucky's offense in the run game and some passing concepts that are very similar.
Well, I know we're only 2 games into the season, but based on what Debo has done in his first 2 games, is he deserving of being listed among the top Heisman contenders so far?
Well, I don't know what else is out there, but I know the impact he's had on our football team in 2 ball games, absolutely. So that's not a big working, sample. But at the end of the day, in 2 ball games, I don't know that anyone's impacted a game more than he has for us in 2 ball games.
Will, you mentioned your assistant coaches a lot. When you assembled your staff, what were some of the things that you were looking for that were important to you in an assistant coach?
Well, I think it's really important to have like-minded people, and what I mean by that is people that think the way you think as far as – and I don't want yes guys. I want guys that – and that's a great thing about our staff. They're not afraid to tell you, no, I don't think we need to do that, to offer a different perspective. But I think having like-minded people, and you look defensively of Mike Peterson and Lance Thompson and Tavares Robinson and Coleman Hutch are all guys I've worked with before, all guys I've been around before, all guys I know when the bullets start flying, they're going to be loyal, and they're going to work hard, and they understand how we want to play defense at South Carolina. They understand the type of student athlete we're looking for. They understand all of those things, and that sometimes is a hard process to have to teach somebody to understand those things. So they've been in the organization. They understand that. You know, offensively, Kurt Roper's a guy that I obviously had worked with before, and philosophically we're on the same page about what we want to be offensively. And I think that's really important. And then as you work down the line there, Pat Washington's a guy I've known for a long time. I've known Pat. I was at Eastern Kentucky recruiting South Georgia. Pat was at the University of Tennessee. And our budget at Eastern Kentucky wasn't real good. And so I couldn't find a hotel, and Pat showed me down in Valdosta, Georgia. There's right off, it's not the Jolly Inn anymore. I can't remember the name of the hotel now. But it's right off the interstate there. Showed me, and he actually took me out to dinner that night, and he actually paid for my meal. Now, this is like 20 years ago. And I remember those sort of things. But Pat's been a guy that's been in our league for a long time. He's been in a lot of the recruiting wars. I personally know him. I know what kind of person he is. I know what kind of football coach he is. He's been a special teams coordinator before and works a lot with Coleman on special teams. Bobby Bentley, I was with at Auburn for last year. I didn't know Bobby, but from afar as a high school coach at Burns in South Carolina, and, of course, the job he did here. I really felt like building the relationships with the coaches in our state was going to be critical in coming in, and then be able to hire one of our own here from the state of South Carolina with Bobby was huge. Brian McClendon is a guy that I've recruited against, and I hate recruiting against him, so I figured why don't we just go ahead and hire him so I don't have to recruit against him anymore. But is an outstanding football coach. And one of my best friends, Mike Bobo, worked with Brian. I called Mike and asked him, and he just sounded off on him as far as the type person he is and the type ball coach he is and what he's going to do for our organization. And then Eric Wolford's a guy that, again, I've respected from afar, but I have a lot of like-minded people that think like I think as far as what you want in an offensive line coach, and have been nothing but pleased with the job that Eric has done with our offensive line. So I think as much as anything, like-minded people that think like you think, but aren't afraid to express their opinion as well.
Will, when it came over the offseason to keeping Debo healthy, what was the biggest change? Exercise, diet, drinking more water? What was it?
I think a couple things. I think he's done a much better job with his nutrition and his diet. I think a lot of some things that we implemented in the offseason, the yoga, I think, was a huge part of the flexibility that's really helped our football team overall. I think that he stayed here in May. He lifted, and he didn't take a month off. And not to say that when they go home that they don't lift, but they don't work as hard as they do if Jeff Dillman's not standing there. And so I think there's a combination of things. I think his hydration that's helped him. I think all of those things are a combination of things. But he personally has invested himself into this now. We can't be with him all the time. And he certainly on his own has worked extremely hard to put himself in this position.
Coach, 66 points in 2 games. I know you probably don't get caught up too much with the stats, but I mean, you guys didn't achieve that feat till week 5 last season. Night and
I remember.
Night and day from last season with the defense. I know they're still coming along. It seems like the red zone's really strong. How do you keep those guys motivated, knowing like, look, last year you guys are kind of carrying the torch and kind of helping our offense when they were down. Now, with these guys, how do you kind of tell them, like, look, even though they're putting up points, you can't depend on them to put up 30, 40 points, as the season goes on?
I don't know that that's an issue with this football team. I think that this is a team that complements each other very well. In really all 3 phases, they understand the importance of playing extremely well in all 3 phases each week, and we certainly have our work cut out for Saturday night. So this team's been a fun team to be around as far as the way they've approached and prepared themselves. And I think that each week our guys understand we need to play at a very high level. And I think they understand that certainly for Saturday night against Kentucky.
Stay in the back.
Well, obviously, 2-0. What have you seen from Jake Bentley that you've liked? Maybe what have you seen from Bentley that you haven't liked so far?
Well, I mean, again, I think a guy that's progressed tremendously in knowledge of our scheme, our system, run game, pass game, protections, where to take the ball, making fast decisions, quick decisions. There's not a lot I've been upset with, to be honest with you. There's some things that we certainly can, that he can do better and we can coach better, absolutely. There's no doubt about that. So, and he'll be the first one to sit here and critique himself. But that's what really good players do. They critique themselves. and they always see room for improvement, and he certainly does as well. But I've been extremely pleased with how he's played.
Will, with more attention coming Debo's way, do you worry about how he'll handle it? Do you sit and talk with him and say, hey, you keep playing this way, this is what's coming your way?
No, I mean, I think that, Debo's an extremely bright young man. He understands that whatever attention he gets is well-deserved. But at the end of the day, we've got to continue to be, and I think we've done a fantastic job of being creative in different ways to move him around. He's extremely bright. He can play inside. He can play outside. He can play in the backfield if we asked him to. That makes it more difficult for a defense to find him and where he is located, and we're going to continue to do so.
When Jake is having a start like he did against Missouri where he's a little overhyped, maybe overthrowing some stuff, do you guys have to say anything to him, or is he kind of the kind of quarterback who can just sort of work his way through that, see what he missed, and go from there?
No, I think, I know on the headsets Kurt talked to him a little bit about calming down and just getting in the groove of the game, but he's a really good player. I mean, at the end of the day, those guys come around, and he may miss a throw or two here or there, and I know that shocks everybody, but that does happen every now and then, and you just keep playing the game. And at the end of the game, it's a 60-minute game unless you go into overtime, and he'll make his throws.
Seeing the Hayden jet sweep, how much did that kind of open your eyes and open Coach Roper's eyes as to some of the more things you can do with him? Does that maybe expand his role even more?
Well, we've done that really since spring. Of course, we don't open practice, so you hadn't seen it. So we're not going to. But, I mean, again, I think that it's not really about plays, it's about players and finding different ways for those guys to get the football. And whether it's Hayden or it's Brian Edwards or it's Rico Dowdle or it's A.J. Turner or it's Debo Samuel, let's get them the ball in some different ways that we do it within our scheme and system that's not totally foreign concept to our players and something that they can understand and get it ready within a week's time to get it going. But we did a lot of that in fall camp, and Rope and this offensive staff have done a fantastic job of being creative in what we do, and we'll continue to do that.
How important are home games, and especially the home game atmosphere, for recruiting and the recruiting process?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, a young man and his family want to come to Williams-Brice Stadium and see a great environment and to see a great game and an atmosphere and envision themselves playing at Williams-Brice Stadium and how they're going to be treated and how our fan base is. I mean, those things are critical in the recruiting process. It's certainly an integral part of it.
Well, what's been the key to winning the turnover battle, now 2 for 2 here?
Well, again, I think that's something that's the number one core value of our football team as far as football being related to the game of football is taking care of the ball offensively as a ball carrier and getting the ball off people on defense. I mean, it's something we talk about every single day. You can't talk about it enough. We do drill work with it as far as ball security is concerned. We do drill work defensively to get the ball off people, to identify what we call violators, of guys that put the ball in jeopardy. And that's something that we talk about all the time. And the momentum it creates for your football team, the field position it creates for your team, it's the most important thing.
Well, Coach, going back to creating a great atmosphere for recruiting, I know there was the live music you talked about before the season, how excited you guys were about that. Is there any insight you can provide who might be doing the music, and if players might have any say on what kind of songs are?
It's not going to be my playlist, I can tell you that. But I'll be honest with you, I'm not making all those decisions. I'll let somebody else. If it's my playlist, we may lose some folks.
What song would it be if you were picking?
Huh?
What song or two would you have?
Well, obviously, I like Darius Rucker, and I'm not just saying that because he's a South Carolina guy, but I do like him, and Kenny Chesney would be my two guys that I'd listen to.
Hey, Coach,
There's
just
not a lot of those guys listening to that, I can tell you that.
talk a little bit about Tyson Williams in the process and where he didn't carry the ball in just a few plays in the first game to where he was an integral part of your running game on this past Saturday.
Right. Well, I think, again, Tyson was a guy that we've got a lot of confidence in to be an outstanding back. He ran the ball extremely well the other night. The first ball game we only played 51 snaps, I believe. We had a kickoff return for a touchdown. We had 2 touchdown drives, I think, of 2 or 3 plays or less. and we couldn't get off field on defense. We played over 100 snaps, so there was limited number of opportunities really for Rico, Tyson, and AJ to get carries in the first ball game. But that's three guys that we've got a lot of confidence in, and as we get into a game situation, the guys that are running the ball the best, that's who we're going to go with.
Any other questions for Coach? That's all right.
All right, thank you.